The massive ship appeared above Earth without warning. It was bigger than any city, its hull gleaming like liquid metal under the sun's light. For 3 days, it simply waited in orbit while every government on Earth scrambled to understand what was happening. Then it spoke to every human on the planet at once. "People of Earth," the voice said, somehow reaching into every mind without using any technology humans could detect. "We are the Galactic Confederation. We have come to welcome you to the community of intelligent species." Ambassador Krell of the Zephyrian Empire stood on the bridge of the massive vessel, looking down at the small blue world below. He had done this ceremony thousands of times across the galaxy. It was always the same. New species would be amazed, then frightened, then grateful to join the galactic community. "Your species has achieved faster than light travel," the voice continued. "This means you are ready to learn your place in the universe. We offer you peace, protection, and knowledge beyond your dreams." Krell smiled with his 4 mouths. The humans would be so easy. Their scans showed a primitive species barely out of their home system. Their weapons were crude. Their ships looked like they were held together with hope and metal scraps. Most amusing of all, they were still fighting each other over patches of dirt on their single world. "However," the voice said, and Krell's tone became serious, "there are rules that all civilized species must follow. You will limit your population to sustainable levels. You will surrender all weapons that could harm other worlds. You will accept Confederation oversight of your government and military. You will trade only through approved channels." The message was being broadcast to every human leader, every scientist, every person who might have influence. Krell had learned that explaining the rules clearly from the start saved time later. "These are not requests," the voice explained patiently. "Every species in the galaxy has accepted these terms. Those who refuse..." Krell paused for effect. "Well, there are no species who have refused for very long." On Earth, President Chen of the Global United Nations called an emergency meeting. Leaders from every nation gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, their faces grim. The alien ship hung in the sky above them like a sword, impossible to ignore. "What are our options?" asked Prime Minister Williams. General Rodriguez, head of Earth's combined military forces, shook his head. "Our best weapons can't even reach that ship. Our most powerful missiles would probably bounce off its hull like raindrops." "Maybe we should listen to them," suggested Chancellor Muller. "They're offering us knowledge, technology, peace with other species. These could be good things. At what cost?" asked President Chen. "They want to control our population, our government, our military. They want us to give up our freedom." Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's leading expert on the few alien technologies they had managed to study, spoke up. "I've been analyzing their ship. The technology is incredible, but there's something strange about it. It's very advanced but also very old, like they stopped innovating centuries ago." Ambassador Krell was growing impatient. Usually, primitive species responded within hours. The humans were taking days to consider something that should be obvious. He decided to help them understand their situation better. "Perhaps you need a demonstration," his voice echoed across Earth again. "Observe." High above the planet, a small section of the massive ship glowed briefly. A beam of energy, barely visible, reached down and touched an empty section of the Pacific Ocean. The water simply vanished. A perfect circle 10 miles across was suddenly gone. Steam rose from the edges where the ocean rushed in to fill the space. "That was our lowest power setting," Krell explained calmly. "We could remove your entire planet just as easily. Please understand, we do not wish to harm you. But you must understand your place in the universe." The demonstration had the opposite effect that Krell expected. Instead of fear, he detected something else in the humans' communications: anger, curiosity, and strangest of all, excitement. President Chen stood before the assembly again. "They've shown us what they can do. Now we need to decide how we respond." "We have to surrender," said Chancellor Muller. "We can't fight that." "Maybe we can't fight it today," said General Rodriguez slowly. "But who says we have to fight it the way they expect?" Dr. Kim was studying readings from the ocean demonstration. The energy beam was incredibly powerful, but it was also incredibly inefficient. They used enough power to destroy a mountain just to boil some water. There might be weaknesses we can't see yet. President Chen looked around the room at faces from every nation on Earth. "We need to vote. Do we accept their terms or do we refuse?" The vote was closer than anyone expected, but in the end, humanity made its choice. President Chen activated the global communication system that would send their response back to the alien ship. Every human on Earth could hear her words. "Ambassador Krell of the Galactic Confederation," she said clearly. "We have considered your offer. We thank you for your demonstration, and we have an answer for you." On his ship, Krell leaned forward. Finally, these primitive creatures would see reason. "Our answer is no," President Chen continued. "We will not accept your rules. We will not give up our freedom. We will not surrender our weapons or limit our population. We will not accept your oversight." Krell's four mouths dropped open in shock. In 3,000 years of first contact protocols, no species had ever said no. Not directly. Not so simply. "Furthermore," President Chen said, and now there was steel in her voice, "we want you to know something about humanity. We are not afraid of you. We are not impressed by your threats. If you want to test us, if you want to see what we're made of, then go ahead. Test us." The transmission ended. Krell stared at the small blue world below, unable to process what he had just heard. Around him, his crew looked equally stunned. "Sir," his aide whispered, "what do we do now?" Krell straightened his uniform and composed himself. He had procedures for this situation, even though he had never expected to use them. "We follow protocol," he said firmly. "We begin the standard escalation sequence. Economic isolation first, then pressure, then military action if necessary. This species will learn just like all the others." But as Krell gave his orders, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about these humans. When other species refused, they sounded desperate or afraid. The humans had sounded eager. On Earth, emergency meetings continued through the night. Plans were made. Resources were allocated. Old enemies put aside their differences to face a common threat. "They'll try to isolate us first," Dr. Kim explained to the military leaders. "Cut us off from any chance of galactic trade or technology sharing. Make us feel alone." "Good," said General Rodriguez with a grim smile. "We've been alone for our entire history. We know how to handle that." "What about their advanced technology?" asked President Chen. "We'll learn," Dr. Kim said simply. "We always do. They showed us their energy weapon. That was their first mistake. Now we know it exists and we can start figuring out how it works." As the alien ship continued to orbit Earth, both sides prepared for what was coming. The Galactic Confederation had never faced a species that refused their offer so completely. They expected the humans to surrender quickly once the pressure began. The humans, for their part, began preparing for the greatest test their species had ever faced. But they weren't preparing to survive it. They were preparing to win it. Neither side yet understood just how badly they had misunderstood each other. The Confederation saw primitive savages who needed to be taught their place. Humanity saw teachers who had just volunteered to show them how the galaxy really worked. The test was about to begin. Ambassador Krell stood before the Galactic Confederation Council, his report ready. The great chamber stretched for miles, filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years looked down at him with patience earned through endless experience. "The Earth humans have refused our standard offer," Krell announced. "I recommend we begin Phase 1 isolation protocols." High Counselor Vex of the Altarian Empire, oldest of the Confederation species, spoke with a voice like grinding stone. "How long do you estimate before their surrender?" 50 standard years maximum," Krell replied confidently. "Probably less. Their technology is primitive. Their economy depends entirely on their single world. Once they realize they are truly alone in the universe, they will beg to join us." The council voted unanimously. Economic and social isolation had never failed. Within days, the barriers went up around Earth's solar system. Massive energy fields blocked all approaches. Any human ship that tried to leave was turned back. The few alien vessels that had been trading with Earth were recalled. The blockade was complete. On Earth, the leaders watched their few off-world colonies get cut off from supply runs. Their primitive space stations went silent as alien technology was remotely shut down. For the first time in their short spacefaring history, humanity was completely alone. Most species would have panicked. The Confederation had detailed records of how isolation affected emerging civilizations. First came denial, then anger, then depression as resources ran low and hope faded. Finally came the desperate message of surrender. The humans did something different. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Chen announced to a joint session of Earth's government, "we are now completely on our own. No alien technology, No alien trade. No alien help of any kind. The assembled leaders waited for her to continue, to explain their desperate situation. This is the greatest opportunity in human history, she said with a smile. Dr. Sarah Kim had been put in charge of the newly created Department of Independent Development. Her first report to the global leadership was delivered just 6 months after the blockade began. We're making incredible progress, she announced. Without access to alien technology, our people have been forced to innovate. We're developing solutions we never would have considered before. General Rodriguez nodded in agreement. The military has been working around the clock. We're designing ships, weapons, and defenses based purely on human engineering. They're not as advanced as alien technology, but they're built the way humans build things. Which means, asked President Chen. They're tough, reliable, and we understand every bolt and wire, Rodriguez explained. When something breaks, we can fix it. When we need more, we can build them. When we need them to do something different, we can modify them. The changes were visible across Earth's solar system. Asteroid mining operations, once dependent on alien equipment, were rebuilt using human ingenuity. The new mining ships were ugly. Practical vessels that worked in conditions that would destroy prettier alien designs. Mars colonies that had struggled with alien terraforming technology began developing their own solutions. The human approach was messier, slower, but it worked. More importantly, it kept working even when cut off from outside support. Most surprising of all was Venus. The Confederation had classified it as completely uninhabitable. The humans looked at the surface, temperature of 900 degrees in the crushing atmosphere, and saw it as a challenge. We're not trying to make Venus comfortable. For humans, explained Chief Engineer Patricia Santos during a global briefing, we're making humans who can work on Venus. The floating cities that appeared in Venus's upper atmosphere were marvels of human engineering. They used the planet's own atmosphere for power and raw materials. The humans who lived there were pioneers in environmental suits that let them work in conditions that would kill most galactic species. Krell received reports of all this activity, but he wasn't concerned. They're making themselves busy, he told the council. This is normal. They're trying to prove they don't need us, but their efforts are primitive and wasteful. Their expansion is limited. They cannot possibly maintain this level of activity indefinitely. The Confederation had seen it all before. Species would try to prove their independence, fail, and surrender within a generation. But the reports kept coming, and they kept getting stranger. Sir, Krell's aide reported nervously, the humans have established permanent colonies on 17 worlds and moons in their system, including several that our scientists classified as uninhabitable. Krell frowned. 17? Their original reports showed they barely had colonies on 3 worlds. They've also constructed over 300 space stations and mining facilities. Their ship production has increased by 4,000% since the blockade began. That couldn't be right. Isolated species were supposed to decline, not grow. There's more, sir, the aide continued. They've begun sending deep space probes beyond their system. Long-range exploration vessels that we can't intercept because they don't use any technology we can remotely disable. Krell studied the latest reports from the observation posts around human space. The numbers didn't make sense. Human space traffic had increased dramatically. Their colonies were not just surviving, but thriving. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. Intercepted communication showed human colonists excited about their challenges. Engineers were competing to design better life support systems. Miners were celebrating new extraction techniques. Scientists were making breakthroughs in areas the Confederation hadn't bothered to research for centuries. This is impossible, Krell muttered. Where are they getting the resources? The knowledge? The materials? His science officer, a brilliant Zenthari named Quillex, provided the answer that chilled Krell to his core. They're getting it from each other, sir. From their own people. They're not trying to replace our technology. They're creating their own from scratch. But that should take thousands of years, Krell protested. For most species, yes. But humans seem to accelerate when they're under pressure. They're not just maintaining their civilization during isolation. They're advancing it. 50 years after the blockade began, Krell stood before the council again. This time his report was very different. The humans have not surrendered, he announced to the increasingly concerned assembly of galactic leaders. Their civilization has not collapsed. In fact, it has grown stronger. High Counselor Vex leaned forward, his ancient eyes narrow. Explain. They now control 73 worlds and moons in their system. Their population has tripled. Their space fleet is larger than many Confederation member species. Most concerning of all, their technology is beginning to match our own in several areas. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. Isolation was supposed to weaken primitive species, not strengthen them. How is this possible? Demanded Counselor Zara of the Hegemony. Krell swallowed nervously. We believe the humans are different. Most species rely on gradual improvement and outside knowledge. Humans seem to thrive on challenges and isolation. When we cut them off from galactic technology, they didn't try to recreate it. They created something new. Something new? Vex's voice was dangerous now. Their ships use different principles than ours. Their weapons work in ways we didn't expect. Their colonies exist in environments we thought were impossible to settle. They're not trying to copy galactic civilization. They're building their own. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For the first time in millennia, the standard approach had failed completely. What do you recommend? Asked Vex finally. Krell had hoped to avoid this moment, but he had no choice. Phase 2, Counselor. Economic warfare. As the council voted to escalate, none of them noticed the small human probe that had been listening to their deliberations from just outside their sensor range. Dr. Kim's deep space exploration program had been more successful than even she had hoped. On Earth, President Chen received the probe's data with interest rather than fear. So they're moving to economic warfare, she mused. Good. We'll learn how that works too. General Rodriguez looked at the intelligence data with professional appreciation. They're planning to flood our space with sabotage technology and crash our resource markets. Let them come, Dr. Kim said cheerfully. We've been isolated for 50 years. We know how to be self-sufficient. But they're about to teach us how galactic economics work. And then, asked President Chen, then we'll show them how human economics work, Dr. Kim replied with a grin that would have terrified Ambassador Krell if he could have seen it. The first test was over, and humanity had passed it with flying colors. They had not just survived isolation hour one, they had used it to become stronger, more unified, and more innovative than ever before. The Confederation still thought they were dealing with a primitive species that needed to be taught their place. They had no idea they were actually dealing with a species that viewed every challenge as a learning opportunity. The second test was about to begin, and humanity was ready to learn whatever lessons the galaxy wanted to teach them. The Confederation's economic warfare began subtly, as it always did. Unmarked ships appeared at the edges of human space, broadcasting offers of trade and technology. The vessels claimed to be independent merchants, rebels, or black market dealers willing to break the blockade for the right price. President Chen, now in her second term leading Earth's government, studied the intelligence reports with her senior staff. The offers were tempting: robust advanced power systems, faster ships, medical technology that could extend human life by centuries. It's a trap, warned Director Kim, who now headed the Department of Galactic Affairs. Every piece of technology they're offering has hidden flaws. Our analysis shows built-in failure points, dependency loops, and remote shutdown capabilities. General Rodriguez, his hair now gray from decades of preparation, nodded grimly. Standard economic warfare tactics. Flood the target with advanced but flawed technology. Make them dependent on it. Then either demand surrender or watch their civilization collapse when it all breaks down at once. What about the market manipulation? Asked President Chen to Economic Advisor Jackson, pulled up holographic displays showing trade data. They're crashing the value of our raw materials exports to other systems. Somehow they're flooding the galactic market with cheaper alternatives. They're trying to make our economy worthless. President Chen smiled. And how exactly are we supposed to be hurt by them crashing the value of materials we can't export anyway? The room was quiet for a moment, then Jackson laughed. Right. We've been completely self-sufficient for 50 years. We don't export anything because we can't get past their blockade. So they're trying to crash an economy that doesn't exist, Dr. Kim observed. Interesting. This was the Confederation's first major miscalculation. Economic warfare worked by making species dependent on galactic trade, then manipulating that trade to force surrender. But humanity had been cut off from galactic trade for decades. They had built their economy to function independently, Ambassador Krell received the first reports of human responses to their economic pressure with growing confusion. "Sir," his aide reported, "the humans are accepting the technology offers." "Excellent," Krell replied. "How many colonies have become dependent on our sabotaged systems?" "None, sir. They're buying the technology, but then they're studying it," Krell frowned. "Studying it?" "They take it apart, examine every component, test it in isolated environments, and then—" The aide paused nervously. "They fix the flaws and improve the design." "That's impossible. The sabotage is built into the fundamental architecture. It would take centuries to understand it well enough to repair." "Yes, sir. It should. But they're doing it anyway. Not only are they fixing our sabotage, they're making the technology better than the original." Krell stared at the reports in disbelief. The humans were supposed to become dependent on flawed alien technology. Instead, they were using it as a learning tool to advance their own capabilities. "What about the market manipulation?" Krell asked desperately. "Well, sir, that's where things get complicated." On Mars, Chief Engineer Santos was addressing a colony-wide meeting about the strange new situation humanity found itself in. "The aliens are flooding the galactic market with cheap materials to crash our export economy," she explained to the assembled miners and industrialists. "Since we can't export anything anyway, this doesn't hurt us. But it does create an interesting opportunity." The colony leaders leaned forward with interest. "The cheap materials are arriving at the edge of our space through their own merchants," Santos continued. "We can buy raw materials for almost nothing, process them using our superior techniques, and then sell the finished products through these same black market channels." Dr. Kim had discovered something remarkable about human manufacturing. Isolated for decades, humanity had developed incredibly efficient production methods. Without access to alien automation, they had created their own solutions, often more flexible and reliable than galactic standards. Human-made products began appearing in galactic markets under various disguises. Ships built with human techniques lasted longer than alien equivalents. Human electronics were more resistant to interference. Human materials were stronger and lighter. The products didn't look like alien technology. They were clearly built by someone else using different principles and methods. But they worked better than anything the Confederation species had seen in centuries. "Where are these products coming from?" demanded High Counselor Vex during an emergency council session. Trade Commissioner Drell of the Mercantile Guild shuffled through reports nervously. "We don't know, Counselor. They appeared in black markets about 6 months ago. The quality is exceptional. Our own manufacturers are complaining about lost sales." "What species created them?" "That's the problem, sir. We've analyzed the technology, and it doesn't match any known galactic civilization. The principles are different. The materials are different. The construction methods are completely unknown." Krell felt a cold suspicion growing in his mind. Could they be human-made? The Trade Commissioner looked shocked. "Impossible, sir. Humans are primitive. Their technology is centuries behind our own. These products show sophistication beyond most Confederation members." But Krell was no longer certain about human capabilities. "Show me a comparison analysis." The data that appeared before the Council was disturbing. The mysterious products used principles that were clearly descended from human engineering, but advanced far beyond what should have been possible. "How long have these products been in development?" Vex asked quietly. "Based on the sophistication, we estimate several centuries of research and refinement," replied the Trade Commissioner. "The humans have only had advanced technology for 50 years, Krell pointed out. "Then either our estimates are wrong, or the humans are developing technology faster than any species in galactic history." The truth was even more unsettling than the Council realized. Humanity hadn't spent 50 years slowly improving alien technology. They had spent 50 years learning the principles behind it, then creating their own solutions that were often superior to the originals. Dr. Kim stood before the Global Technology Council, presenting her latest findings. "We've reverse-engineered every piece of alien technology they've sent us," she announced. "Not just copied it, we understand how it works and why it works. More importantly, we've figured out how to make it work better." The room was filled with humanity's brightest scientists and engineers, people who had spent decades pushing the boundaries of what was possible. "The alien energy weapons are powerful but incredibly inefficient," continued Dr. Kim. "They waste enormous amounts of power to create impressive displays. Our versions use 30% of the energy to produce 200% of the effect. What about their ships? Asked Chief Designer Martinez. Fast but fragile. They rely on shields and energy barriers instead of hull strength. Our ships are slower but nearly indestructible. When their shields fail, they're helpless. When our ships lose power, they're still dangerous. General Rodriguez spoke up from the back of the room. The most important thing we've learned is how they think. They've been so advanced for so long they've stopped innovating. They use the same solutions their ancestors developed thousands of years ago. And we? Asked President Chen. We innovate every day, Rodriguez replied with grim satisfaction. We have to. We're still fighting for survival while they're just maintaining their comfort. The economic warfare phase was producing results, but not the ones the Confederation expected. Instead of crushing human civilization, they had accidentally taught humanity how galactic technology and economics worked. The humans had taken that knowledge and improved upon it. 6 months later, Ambassador Krell stood before the Council once again, this time delivering news that shocked the ancient assembly. The humans have not only survived our economic pressure, he reported, they have turned it against us. Human-made products are capturing market share throughout Confederation space. Several member species are asking us to investigate these superior alternatives to our own technology. You're telling us, said High Counselor Vex slowly, that an isolated primitive species has outcompeted our entire industrial base? Not outcompeted, sir, out-innovated. They've taken our own technology, understood it better than we do, and made it better. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. For the first time in millennia, the Confederation was facing economic competition from outside their system. What's our next option? Demanded Counselor Zara. Krell took a deep breath. Phase 3, Counselor. Limited military action. As the council debated their options, they remained unaware that human deep space probes were recording every word. The information was transmitted back to Earth within hours. President Chen read the intelligence reports with interest rather than fear. So they're moving to military action. How do we feel about that? General Rodriguez consulted with his staff before answering. We've been preparing for this possibility for years. Our military capabilities are still behind theirs in raw power, but we've learned a lot about their tactics and technology. Are we ready? Asked President Chen. We're as ready as we can be, Rodriguez replied. But more importantly, they have no idea what they're really facing. They still think we're the same primitive species they first encountered. Dr. Kim. Admiral Thane of the Confederation Naval Forces studied the tactical display showing human space. After 75 years of escalating pressure, the primitive species still refused to surrender. The Council had finally authorized military action while limited, surgical strikes designed to demonstrate overwhelming superiority without causing unnecessary destruction. 10,000 ships should be sufficient, Thane told his staff officers. We'll destroy their military installations, disable their fleet, and force them to accept terms. Standard intimidation protocol. Captain Vex, his tactical officer, nodded confidently. Our intelligence shows approximately 3,000 human vessels total. Most are converted mining ships or crude patrol craft. Their largest warships are barely the size of our escort vessels. Estimated resistance duration? Asked Thane. 6 hours maximum, sir. Possibly less if they surrender after our first demonstration. Admiral Thane had fought dozens of campaigns against stubborn species. None had lasted longer than a day once Confederation military superiority was demonstrated. The humans would be no different. The massive fleet assembled at the edge of human space, their ships gleaming with the accumulated technology of 1,000 civilizations. Energy weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand stellar radiation, faster-than-light drives that made human ships look like they were standing still. On Earth, General Rodriguez received the alert from deep space sensors. The enemy fleet was exactly what they had expected. Overwhelming, technologically superior, and following standard Confederation tactics. How long until they reach our outer defenses? Asked President Chen. She was older now, her hair white, but her voice still carried the steel that had first defied the galaxy. 18 hours at their current speed, Rodriguez replied. They're not trying to hide their approach. This is meant to be intimidating. Dr. Kim, now Director of Advanced Defense Research, studied the sensor readings with professional interest. Look at their formation. Textbook Confederation battle array. They're following procedures that are probably thousands of years old. Any surprises in their technology? Asked President Chen. Nothing we haven't seen before. Better versions of what they've been showing us for decades, but the same basic principles. They're relying on raw power rather than innovation. The room was quiet for a moment as humanity's leaders contemplated the greatest military threat their species had ever faced. Recommendations? Asked President Chen. Let them come, said Rodriguez calmly. We've been studying their tactics for 75 years. They're about to see what we've learned. Admiral Thane watched confidently as his fleet approached the first human outposts. Long-range sensors showed exactly what he expected: small stations and patrol ships fleeing before his overwhelming force. The humans were already retreating. Should we pursue the fleeing vessels? Asked Captain Vex. No need, Thane replied. Let them run back to their main fleet. Fear will do our work for us. But as the Confederation fleet moved deeper into human space, strange things began to happen. Ships that appeared to be fleeing would suddenly change course and attack from unexpected angles. Asteroids that looked empty would explode with weapon fire. Space that seemed clear would suddenly fill with human vessels appearing from nowhere. Where are they coming from? Demanded Thane as another squadron of human ships appeared behind his fleet. Unknown, sir, reported the sensor officer. They seem to be using the asteroid belts and planetary rings as cover, but our sensors should detect them. Our sensors are designed to find ships using standard technology, pointed out Dr. Quillix, the fleet's science advisor. Human technology operates on different principles. It's possible they've developed stealth capabilities we can't detect. The first real shock came when a human missile somehow penetrated the flagship's shields and exploded against the hull. The damage was minimal, but the fact that it had happened at all was disturbing. How did that weapon get through our barriers? Thane asked his engineering staff. It wasn't using energy principles, sir, reported Chief Engineer Cole. It was a kinetic projectile, a simple mass traveling at high speed. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons and guided missiles, not chunks of metal. Chunks of metal can't hurt us, Thane said dismissively. This one was traveling at 15% of light speed, sir. At that velocity, even a small mass carries enormous destructive power. Thane stared at the damage reports. The humans were using principles so simple, so primitive, that Confederation defenses weren't designed to stop them. The battle continued, and the pattern became clear. Human tactics were completely outside standard military doctrine. They used suicide runs where Confederation species used standoff weapons. They employed psychological warfare that confused alien crews. They fought in ways that violated every civilized rule of combat. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to learn and adapt during the battle itself. Captain Sarah Chen, great-niece of the former president, commanded the human destroyer, Defiant, as it engaged a Confederation cruiser 10 times its size. Her ship was built using 75 years of studying alien technology, but designed according to human principles. Target their shield generators, she ordered her weapons officer. Use the kinetic penetrators. The human weapons were crude compared to alien energy beams, but they worked on principles the Confederation had never encountered. Instead of trying to overpower alien shields with raw energy, they used mass and velocity to punch through defenses designed for different threats. Direct hit on their forward shields, reported the tactical officer. Shield integrity dropping rapidly. Now hit them with the virus torpedoes, Chen ordered. The missiles that followed carried something completely unexpected: computer viruses designed to attack alien systems. Dr. Kim's research teams had spent decades studying captured Confederation technology, learning not just how it worked, but how it could be made to fail. Aboard the Confederation cruiser, chaos erupted as systems began malfunctioning. Weapons turned on their own ships. Navigation computers gave false readings. Life support systems shut down randomly. How are they doing this? Demanded the cruiser's captain. Their computer viruses are unlike anything in our databases, reported the ship's AI specialist. They seem to be written by someone who understands our systems better than we do. That was exactly what they were. Humanity had spent 75 years studying every piece of Confederation technology they could get their hands on. They knew how alien computers worked, how alien shields functioned, how alien weapons operated. More importantly, they knew the weaknesses. Admiral Thane watched in growing alarm as his technologically superior fleet struggled against human tactics that made no sense by galactic standards. His ships were faster, more powerful, and better armed, but the humans fought like they were trying to win rather than simply survive. "Sir," reported Captain Vex, "we're losing ships." "How many?" 17 destroyers, 8 cruisers, and 1 battleship. The humans have lost approximately 40 vessels, but they keep fighting. Thane couldn't understand it. By all logic, the humans should have surrendered after losing their first few ships. Instead, they seem to be getting more aggressive. "What's our tactical assessment?" he asked. Dr. Quillix reviewed the data with growing concern. "Admiral, I believe we may have seriously underestimated human capabilities. Their ships are individually inferior to ours, but their tactics are completely outside our experience. They're fighting a type of warfare we haven't seen in thousands of years." "What do you mean?" "They're fighting to win at any cost rather than fighting to minimize losses. They're using tactics that accept heavy casualties if it achieves their objectives. Most galactic species stopped fighting this way millennia ago. The turning point came when the humans did something no Confederation tactician had ever seen before. 3 human ships, all heavily damaged and outgunned, suddenly accelerated directly toward Admiral Thane's flagship. "They're going to ram us," reported the sensor officer in disbelief. "Impossible," Thane replied. "No civilized species uses kamikaze tactics." "The humans aren't trying to be civilized, sir," observed Dr. Quillix quietly. "They're trying to win." The flagship's point defenses managed to destroy 2 of the attacking ships, but the third one got through. The explosion when it struck the Confederation flagship was visible across the entire battle zone. Admiral Thane survived, but his flagship was crippled. Around him, his fleet was discovering that technological superiority meant nothing when faced with an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for victory. "Sir," reported Captain Vex from an auxiliary command center, "the humans are capturing our disabled vessels." "Capturing them?" "Yes, sir. They're boarding ships we thought were safely out of the battle and taking them intact. They seem to be more interested in studying our technology than destroying it." That was when Thane realized the true horror of the situation. The humans weren't just fighting to defend themselves. They were fighting to learn. Every ship they captured, every weapon they examined, every tactical exchange they survived, was teaching them more about how Confederation forces operated. "How long has this battle been going on?" Thane asked wearily. 16 hours, sir." 16 hours. The battle that should have lasted 6 hours maximum was still raging, and his technologically superior fleet was being outfought by primitives using tactics that shouldn't work. "Admiral," Dr. Quillix said quietly, "I recommend we withdraw," and Rias High Counselor Vex stood before the greatest assembly in galactic history. Representatives from every Confederation species filled the vast chamber, their faces grim with the knowledge that their 1,000-year dominance was being challenged by a species they had once dismissed as primitive. "The human problem has escalated beyond acceptable parameters," Vex announced, his ancient voice carrying across the silent hall. "Limited military action has failed. Economic pressure has failed. Isolation has failed. We are left with one option." The chamber erupted in voices, some fearful, some angry, all shocked by what they were hearing. "Total war has not been declared in over 2 millennia, protested Councillor Drell of the Trade Federation. "Are we certain it's necessary?" Admiral Thane, still recovering from his defeat in human space, stepped forward to address the assembly. "Councillors, I have fought the humans directly. They are no longer the primitive species we first encountered. They have become a genuine threat to Confederation supremacy." "How is that possible?" demanded Councillor Zara. "They control 1 star system. We control thousands. They control 1 star system that they have turned into the most heavily fortified region in known space," Thane replied. "Their technology now rivals our own. Their tactics are completely outside our experience. Most dangerous of all, they seem to learn and improve with every challenge we present them." Dr. Quillix provided the technical assessment that shocked the assembly into silence. "In 75 years, humanity has advanced from primitive spaceflight to near parity with Confederation technology. No species in galactic history has developed this quickly. What are you recommending?" asked Vex. Thane took a deep breath before answering. "Total mobilization. Every ship, every weapon, every species in the Confederation. We crush them completely before they become too powerful to stop." The vote was closer than anyone expected, but fear eventually overcame caution. For the first time in 2,000 years, the Galactic Confederation declared total war. Within months, the largest military force in galactic history was assembled. 50 million ships from hundreds of worlds, weapons that could destroy stars, technology that had kept the galaxy peaceful through overwhelming superiority. On Earth, the intelligence networks that humanity had spent decades building throughout Confederation space provided early warning of what was coming. President Sarah Chen, daughter of the woman who had first defied the galaxy, read the reports with the same calm determination her mother had shown decades earlier. 50 million ships, she said to her assembled leadership. Every major species in the galaxy. Everything they have. General Martinez, successor to Rodriguez, studied the tactical projections with professional interest. It's actually quite flattering. They're treating us as a threat equal to their entire civilization. Dr. Kim, now ancient but still brilliant, smiled from her chair at the head of the Science Council. They've finally decided to give us their complete curriculum in galactic warfare. How thoughtful of them. Are we ready? Asked President Chen. We've been ready for decades, Martinez replied. The question is whether they're ready for what we've become. What the Confederation didn't know was that humanity had not been idle during the years since the first military confrontation. The technology captured from that battle had been studied, improved, and mass-produced. More importantly, humanity had been spreading far beyond their home system. The Confederation believed humans controlled one star system. They were wrong. Over the past century, human deep space exploration had identified hundreds of uninhabited systems suitable for colonization. Hidden colonies had been established throughout the galaxy, each one a fortress world designed to support the others if Earth itself fell. More shocking still, humanity had found allies, Ragars, not among the Confederation species, but among the forgotten peoples the Confederation had suppressed or ignored over the millennia. Refugee populations, failed colonies, and species that had been conquered. So long ago that the galaxy had forgotten they existed. These forgotten peoples had been contacted by human exploration teams and offered something the Confederation had never provided. Genuine partnership rather than subjugation. Admiral Thane commanded the central fleet of the Confederation force as it approached human space. The massive armada stretched across light years, its combined firepower enough to sterilize entire sectors of the galaxy. Sir, reported his tactical officer, we're detecting human defensive positions throughout their system, significantly more fortified than our previous intelligence indicated. Thane studied the sensor readings with growing concern. The number of defensive platforms, shipyards, and military installations in human space had grown exponentially since his last visit. How many ships are they fielding? He asked. Difficult to determine, sir. Our sensors are detecting active ships throughout their system, but the numbers don't match our intelligence estimates. They appear to have at least 10 times more vessels than we believed possible. 10 times. Thane couldn't believe it. How is that possible? We've been monitoring their resource production. Dr. Quillix, now serving as the fleet's chief intelligence officer, provided the answer that chilled every officer on the bridge. Admiral, I believe we've been monitoring only one of their production centers. There appear to be human ships arriving from multiple directions, including vectors that suggest colonies far outside their home system. Impossible. We would have detected any expansion beyond their star system. Sir, human stealth technology has advanced considerably since our last encounter. It's possible they've established hidden colonies that our sensors cannot detect. The battle began exactly as Thane expected. The Confederation fleet, with overwhelming numerical and technological superiority, advanced toward human defensive positions. Human ships rose to meet them in formations that seemed hopelessly outnumbered. Then, the surprises began. The first shock came when human ships began appearing from seemingly empty space throughout the Confederation fleet. Stealth technology that rendered entire squadrons invisible had allowed them to position forces exactly where they could do the most damage. The second shock came when human weapons proved far more effective than anticipated. Years of studying captured Confederation technology had allowed humanity to design weapons specifically to exploit alien weaknesses. The third shock was the most devastating. As the battle progressed, new human fleets kept arriving from impossible directions. Ships emerged from hyperspace coordinates that should have been light years from any human territory. Sir, reported the communications officer. "We're receiving surrender demands from human forces behind our lines. They claim to control 17 different star systems and are demanding we withdraw immediately." Thane stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Somehow, while the Confederation had been focused on containing humanity in one system, they had secretly spread across dozens of systems and built a hidden empire. "How is this possible?" he demanded. The answer came from an unexpected source, a communication from the human fleet. "Admiral Thane," said a calm female voice. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Force. We're prepared to discuss terms for your surrender." "Surrender?" Thane almost laughed. "You're outnumbered 50-1, are we?" Chen replied. "Check your sensors again." When Thane looked at the updated tactical display, his blood turned cold. The battle space was full of human ships of far more than should have been possible. They weren't outnumbered 50-1 anymore. The numbers were nearly even. Where did they all come from? Whispered his tactical officer. The answer was more disturbing than anyone had imagined. For decades, while the Confederation had focused on economic and military pressure, humanity had been quietly colonizing empty systems throughout the galaxy. Each colony had been designed as a fortress world, capable of supporting massive ship production and hosting large populations. More importantly, humanity had learned something from their isolation that the Confederation had forgotten: how to be truly self-sufficient. Each human colony could survive independently, fight independently, and produce everything needed for war without any external support. "Admiral," reported Dr. Quillix, "I'm detecting a fundamental flaw in our intelligence estimates. We assumed human expansion would follow standard patterns: gradual, visible, dependent on trade routes and resource sharing. But humans seem to have developed completely independent expansion protocols." "What does that mean?" "It means every human colony is a potential military production center. Every system they control can field fleets equivalent to major Confederation worlds. We're not fighting one species. We're fighting dozens of independent human civilizations that happen to be working together." The battle raged for days, but the outcome became clear within hours. Human forces fought with the same ruthless pragmatism they had shown in previous encounters. But now they had the numbers and technology to back up their tactics. More devastating than their military capabilities was their strategy. While Confederation forces focused on the main battle, human fleets struck it undefended,